Hey, Bev.
Hey, Sam. What's this? This is
I,
different.
I know this is very different, but I kind of like it. We're spicing things up a little bit.
Ooh.
Yeah, we've been talking for quite a few episodes about doing, elusive mini episodes, and now we're actually doing it. It's a miracle.
Oh, it is. Hallelujah.
Yes. So our first mini episode is going to be about incubating and hatching eggs. And then, we have some other ones in mind that we'll do over the next couple of months when we find the time, if we're being brutally honest.
Yeah, I mean, recording a weekly episode that's over an hour long is quite a time commitment. But we think these mini episodes are really important because one of the things that we do during our regular episodes is we talk about the things that we're currently working on, and we've realized that like if somebody really wanted to start doing some of the things that we do, they'd have to listen to like a whole lot of episodes in order to get like all of the information that they need to actually do it. And some of that information is going to be sort of like disjointed and like discombobulated just because like we learned something by the next week that, like we didn't know when we recorded the week before. So it's constantly like evolving and changing how we do it.
Exactly. So I don't know about Bev necessarily, but I get quite a few questions that kind of are the same. So I get questions about incubating and hatching. I get questions about how do I brood chicks? How do I brood ducks? What do I do if the chicken has this or that? Or how do I deal with started pullets? Things like that. So it might be handy, for both of us to be able to say, here, have this link of knowledge, listen to it and take notes, and you're welcome.
Well, people don't actually send me any questions. I don't know if I have like RBF like in my Instagram photos or something. But yeah, nobody asked me anything. So maybe I'm not
No.
approachable, but yeah.
No, 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 no. I have RBF to the point where people have thought that I hated them. So I highly doubt it's that. I think, you've just opened the floodgates by acknowledging that you don't get those questions because now you're going to get all the questions.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you
So
ask
good
me a
job.
question, just remember that it might take me a while to respond. So there we go. There's
Yes,
my disclaimer.
you have human children and goats and a husband and, which is really can be like another child depending on their mood, So
Sometimes, most of the time, he
sometimes.
does a great job. Like when he fixed my broken garage door yesterday. So,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
very nice
yeah.
of him.
Yeah, it was super nice of him. I'll tell that story on a full episode, like when we're not trying to cram all the info into 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna talk about incubating. We're gonna tell you from the beginning, like how to get started and how to get all the way through it. And then you can use that information and incubate your own eggs if you want. Or even if you don't plan on incubating eggs, you can still listen to this and enjoy it because you know that it's Sam and Bev.
Yes.
So, like, we could say anything.
Yeah, I mean, we are pretty entertaining, if I do say so myself. Also, I guess like maybe it's a farm person thing. I don't know, but I love to learn new things, even about things that I don't completely understand or would find technically very useful. I mean, I watch documentaries on how to make wine, but I'm not making my own wine. So there's that too.
And even if you have incubated eggs before, like I don't think that this is going to necessarily be useless.
Mm-mm.
I know one of the things that I like to do is I love like hearing other people's perspectives on how they do things because I might like take one little piece from this blog and then I'll take like this tiny piece from this podcast and then like mash them together and make my
Yeah.
own little
You can
thing
always still
out of it.
learn new tips and tricks along the way.
That's so true. So yeah, so let's get started incubating some eggs.
Woohoo.
When you get started incubating eggs, what do you need? What do you start with? What are the ingredients?
So I think the most important ingredient, well, one of them maybe, is, actual fertile eggs, which some people might not even understand how to tell if they're fertile or not. The easiest way to tell is to crack open an egg. Now, I recommend that if you're pulling them out of your own coop, your own backyard, I don't recommend that if you're buying them from a breeder that's already saying they're fertilized because, you're kind of sacrificing something that might not necessarily need to be sacrificed. So, for your own backyard eggs to see if the roosters are in fact doing their job, you can crack one open and you'll see a little bullseye. It's a white bullseye. It's not like the red and white bullseye. Um, but we'll link a picture in the show notes of a fertilized yolk versus a non-fertilized yolk so you can see the difference. So that's the easiest way to tell from there.
Okay. And you can't tell whether they're fertilized by candling them.
No, you can't. That would be really
Okay.
nice, but you can't.
That sure would be.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Then you also have the option of buying fertile eggs from a breeder or from, a breeder that is shipping them to you. So from a breeder, you're just throwing them in don't throw them, but they're just in your car. You're doing the shady parking lot.
Gently
Yeah,
place.
you're doing the shady parking lot exchange, like Bev did or what have you. Those will probably do pretty well hatching. Now, if you get them shipped, it can get a little dicey because you have the third party of the USPS in there. Not throwing them under the bus because I'm pretty sure most of them don't just kick the crap out of your packages for no good reason. I mean, unless they're having a bad day, I don't know. But, they're in a truck, there's other packages, they can get bumped around, and that could decrease your hatch rate. So if you have kind of a crappy hatch from shipped hatching eggs, it's not necessarily the breeder's fault because the eggs are going on a long journey. And it's a big difference between that and when you just grab them from your coop and walk them into your house.
Yeah, because the reason hatching eggs have such a low hatch rate is because if the yolk gets disturbed too much and broken apart in there, or
Right.
the air sac gets broken, that egg is not gonna hatch. And you can candle eggs to see that the yolk is still intact before you put it in there. You'll notice it'll be a nice dark blob that sort of floats to the fat end of the egg while you're holding the little side down over your candler, and it'll be a whole nice circle.
Yes.
If it's all floating around and in a C shape, you know that yolk is broken.
You can't tell if they're fertile, but you can tell if they're good. So candling them before you put them in does have a purpose.
Yeah.
And then when you do get shipped hatching eggs, or even the parking lot drop type deal, it doesn't hurt to let them rest. And what that means is you're setting them fat end up, in a carton or something, and you just let them sit there for 24 hours. This is going to make sure the yolk is hanging out and it's happy and it's in the right place before you put them in the incubator, whether it's on their side or in an egg turner that's upright. And also a note, we use an egg turner here for our chick eggs, but it's not required in order to successfully have a hatch. I'm just lazy and forgetful, so if I can avoid having to hand turn them, I do.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I had intended to not use our egg turner in our incubator, but it turned out that the egg turner sort of had the eggs sitting in the right spot in there. So I preferred it because otherwise the eggs were kind of loose in there and rolling around, and it was hard to keep them on the exact spot that I turned them, just laying flat on the thing.
Okay.
So I used the egg turner also. Yeah.
All right. So that's interesting because I thought you were hand turning yours. So that's interesting that you found that was just easier too.
Yeah, I mean, at first what we did was we just put the turner in there, and we were just hand turning each egg individually, even though the turner was in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then the auto turner was sort of swinging around in there and bumping into it anyways.
Oh.
So it was these things are getting jostled by this machine part anyways. And there's not a way to turn it off on our incubator.
Okay.
So I just decided to use it since that's how it was designed. I mean, and as you heard on the last episode, my turner actually broke one of the eggs that we were doing because I had accidentally stuck it in the wrong spot. So I figured if it's installed where it's supposed to be, it's going to do the least amount of damage.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously we're talking egg turners. So the other thing you're going to need is an incubator. So what kind of incubator do you have?
So I have one of the Magic Fly incubators, which is the $65 China one from Amazon, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It had surprisingly good reviews for the price. So that was why I went with that one. I didn't want to invest a ton of money in an incubator because I'm not going to have a big like flock of chickens because I just can't handle that many here. I don't have the space and I don't have the
Right.
need for that many eggs. So we're probably just going to be incubating every year just to add a few to the flock so that we can still get eggs all winter since first year pullets will continue to lay through the winter as long as they've started laying before the day gets too short.
Yeah. So I have one, it's called a Hovabator, and it's kind of funny. I think I mentioned before on a regular podcast. It's actually a borrowed one. We don't technically own one, but we've had this for almost a year and the guy hasn't asked for it back. So Sam needs to buy a second one just in case, he does eventually want it back. He hasn't been hatching actively in the past couple of years, so it's probably fine. It's a gift, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the law is on that.
Until he listens to this and he's like, hey, give me my incubator
Give it
back.
I really like it. With the egg turner, I believe you can fit like 30 eggs in there. And then if it's laying flat, you can probably fit even more, which is just crazy
That's
to me.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine only fits 12, or it says 12. I could only fit 9 in the egg turner. And without the egg turner, I think I could fit like 30 in there if I like Tetrised them in all perfectly. That'd be a tight squeeze though.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that many. Maybe 20.
It would make hand turning like really difficult too if it was that like sandwiched in there, or maybe it would help it stay in place. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's hard to say.
So yeah, I love the Hovabator. I can't remember the model number, but we did talk about it in a previous episode. So we'll dig that up and put that in the show notes so you guys can take a look. But honestly, like if you're shopping around for an incubator, I think the best thing to do is maybe just ask other people what they're using or just go on Amazon and read reviews for a while and see which one's going to fit your situation the best.
Yeah, because they really do range like pretty intensely, like price, size, features, and whatnot. And you can hatch using a homemade incubator. There's tons of instructions out there on the Google. If you just like Google homemade incubator, I'm not going to link to one in the show notes because neither Sam or I have built a homemade incubator,
right?
Let alone like had success with it. So we don't want to point you towards something that we don't know whether it's going to work or not. But you can certainly look that up. Like if the budget is tight, but you want an incubator, there's something to do with like a styrofoam cooler and a heat lamp. And
my husband was just talking about, we have this, I don't know if he meant the mini fridge or we have like a beer style kind of a taller fridge too in the garage, and he was talking about converting one into a massive incubator, and I was like, you can go for it if you want to. So if that happens, I will have to share that experience with you guys so we can see if it's a success or a fail. I feel like it can't be that difficult, but I don't know.
No, I mean, so one thing that I learned like from the hatching experience, even though my eggs didn't actually hatch, it was pretty like hands off and it sort of did its own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the auto turner, I basically just had to like double check the humidity was right and the temperature was right, make sure that it looked like they were being turned over. But otherwise, like it sort of did it itself. Yeah. Another thing that I definitely recommend that you have in the incubator is a digital hygrometer, which tells the humidity and temperature. My incubator tells the temperature in Celsius, which doesn't do me any good because I'm a selfish American that only uses Fahrenheit and has no idea what the heck like Celsius means. So I got my hygrometer tells me the temperature in Fahrenheit so that I can peek at that to like make sure that it's right. I think 37.5 degrees Celsius is the same as like 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, the trick I think, is to take Celsius, times it by 2, or add it together. So we'll round up to 40 plus 40, and then you take half of the 40, and it's 20. So that's 100. So that's how you can convert Celsius to Fahrenheit roughly and easily in your brain.
What?
Yeah, I know. I learned that from one of my oceanography professors in college, and she was Canadian. So yeah, that is like one of the most useful pieces of information that I have learned in college. I'm so glad I went into so much debt just to learn that little nugget of information.
Right. Wait, so how did you do that again? Okay. So I was 37 and a half was what I said, right? So you rounded it up to 40 and then you cut it in half and then you multiplied it by 5?
No, 40 plus 40.
Okay.
So you just take what it is and then add whatever it is to it. So 40 plus 40, and then half of 40 is 20.
Okay.
So that gives you 100.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it now. Okay. So 40 plus 40, and then half of the 40 is 20, so you add the 20 to the
Yeah.
80, and you get 100. Got it.
Magic.
All right.
Look at that.
Math lesson. See, you never know what you're going to
And I
learn here.
freaking hate math too, but that is just a useful nugget of information if, yeah. Because we're like the only ones that use Fahrenheit, right?
Yeah, we are. Everybody else is on,
Yeah.
we're on the empirical system. Everybody else uses metric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes along with our temperature for some reason. I don't know the history behind that. Maybe we'll talk about that some other day. But now we're talking about incubating.
Woo! Okay.
Hey, Sam, have you heard of that subscription box that's for chickens and their keepers?
Oh, yes, I have. In fact, I've been a longtime subscriber and a big fan of the chicken box that sends me stuff for me and for my chickens.
Yes, and that would be the Henny and Roo box, right?
Correct. Ding, ding, ding. Winner, winner. I don't want to say chicken dinner. No.
Oh, yeah, the chickens might not like that.
But anyways, I totally enjoy that we can get this chicken box of treats and first aid and treats for the humans just delivered right to your door every single month. Small family run business, and they check out all the products and test them out on their flock before sending to us.
And if you're not a subscriber of Honey and Roo yet, you should go ahead and get on that over on honeyandroo.com, and you can use the code DRINKANDFARM, that's and spelled out with A-N-D, and you'll get 10% off your first subscription. And when you support our sponsors, you're supporting our podcast, which is super awesome of you. Cheers.
So I totally agree with the hygrometer thing. And actually, this duck hatch that I just did was the first time that we were measuring humidity because it is so important for the duck eggs, especially. But yeah, so you want that temp. Well, there's two different kinds of incubators. There's air forced and then there's still air, but they both kind of hang out around the same temp range. So with the forced air incubator, which I think is like most incubators, it just means there's a fan in there.
Most modern ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those should sit at like 99.5 to 100. And then the still air, which might be something that you make on your own and maybe you don't have a fan, they recommend 101 to 102. But I've only used forced air, so I don't want to like preach the gospel on the still air because I haven't experienced it.
Yeah. Nope, I agree with that. And I remember learning that as well. And then the humidity that you want to have when you're starting off is somewhere between like 35 and 55%. You don't want to let it get any higher than that while you're doing the first 18 days of incubation, because if it's too humid in there, the air sac won't deplete to be large enough for the chick to take its first breath of air. So you have to let some of that humidity leave the egg while the chick is developing. But on the other hand, you don't want to let it sit too dry for too long either, because then the air sac gets too big too fast and the chick can like dry out in there and get stuck to the inside of the shell. So it's like this like little dance of humidity. I found online that the best advice was to try to stay just between 40 and 50, because then it didn't get too dry in there and it didn't get too wet in there. When you're candling, you can mark a line on your eggs where you see the air sac at, so that you can see that the air sac is getting bigger as the days are progressing, but it's not getting bigger like too fast, because you can always increase the humidity if you feel like it might be.
Yeah, and then, after the 18th day when you go into lockdown, you do want to increase that humidity. For chicks, it's recommended between 65 to 75%. And that's where that hygrometer comes into real, it's really handy, especially if it's digital and it's got big letters and numbers on it for people with bad eyes like me.
And that you can actually see through it, see through your incubator to it, because during lockdown, you don't want to be opening your incubator up and closing it a lot, because the eggs are supposed to stay still. There's no more turning, no more messing with anything. You're just watching and waiting for them to hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during the first days 1 through 18 is when you're going to be turning your eggs or having the turner on. If you don't have a turner, you turn them 3 times a day. Making sure that they don't spend the night on one side or the other 2 nights in a row. So that's why you turn them an odd number of times. You want to make sure that they're sleeping on opposite sides every other night, so the chick doesn't get stuck.
Once you get your incubator going and it's at temperature and it's doing its thing that it's supposed to do, it's holding steady, you can add the eggs in there. Woohoo! But you do have to wait.
I feel like we just did all of that kind of opposite. That's all right.
It's fine. Uh, but stuff doesn't really get exciting until about like day 7. Day 7 is when you can really start to see some veins and a small embryo, forming inside. But day 10 is like when the party really starts and you start seeing some movement. And you can use a candler like Bev got, or you can use a flashlight. The candler does seem easier than a flashlight.
I mean, the egg does balance on it pretty nicely. Like I was able to snap pictures of those eggs while I was candling at the same time. The fist on the flashlight thing, I could have never done that because I couldn't like create a good enough seal using one hand and like pick up my phone with the other. So yeah, I picked up my candler for like $12 at Family Farm and Home, I think is the store that I went to grab that at. But I'll see if I can find one that's just like it. I'll throw a link to it to one on Amazon if I can find one there in
Sweet.
the show notes so that you can grab one
Yeah.
if you don't have one
And
of those
then,
near you.
like, we had a flashlight, and my husband found this little cone thing. I don't even know where it came from, but it had like a hole at the end, so we just kind of balanced the egg and hold the egg on top of it, and that worked. If you're on a budget, you can get a little crafty with that. But for how much we hatch here, I might as well just buy the candler. It'd probably be easier to deal with.
Well, and it was kind of nice to know that like the candler it was designed
Hmm.
specifically so that I could see the chick inside the egg. So when I candled my eggs that were duds and I didn't see anything, that was when I was like positive that something was wrong. So I was like, all right, I'm not doing this wrong. I'm not seeing something. It's just that there's nothing in there to see. Because yeah, that's good to know that
Yeah,
there's movement like by day 10, so you can be watching out for that while you're candling.
exactly.
That also makes like the egg experience more fun for the kids. I candled ours on day 7, day 14, and
Yeah.
day 18. Those were the days that I candled because I candled right before we went on lockdown. And we went on lockdown the night of the 18th
Okay.
was the way that I
Yeah,
did
we
it,
check. We usually
right
do
before
that
bed.
too.
Do you normally lock down first thing in the morning?
It just depends on like when we put
Okay.
them in, but we're like so laid back when we hatch. Like, oh, whoops, okay, it's day 17, so that means tomorrow we can't open it anymore, and we need to stop the turner because eggs can actually hatch in an upright turner.
Yeah.
For chicks, for ducks, you do have to take them out of the turner if you choose to use a turner, and then set them on their side. I don't know why there's a difference, but apparently there is based on what I've read. But we usually candle day 17, 10, 15, and 18, like right before lockdown too. But sometimes poultry is a little tricky.
Okay.
When it's hatching, because some of the ones that you might have thought quit at some point end up hatching, and a lot of that will take some time of just doing several hatches to get the hang of it. So I know a lot of people are like, if it's a dud or it quits, you should really remove it because you don't want that bacteria in there, blah, blah, blah. But I've also had quote unquote duds end up hatching. Like this morning, I woke up and I thought, we had 2 chicks in the incubator. One is like, or not chicks, they're ducks. One's like neon yellow and hatched like all on its own. It's beautiful. There's another one that's it's another yolk absorbing situation that we had to deal with. Sometimes they'll hatch prematurely, like chickens and ducks, and the yolk's not fully absorbed. So what you can do is put them in a little bit of wet paper towel, make sure it's warm, and you can put them in a little solo cup so they're kind of upright position. We'll add some pictures or links of something for you guys to check out because what I'm talking about sounds really confusing, but it's actually super simple. You can put a little bit of Neosporin on the navel area if it's starting to look a little questionable because that can get infected. You can put a little bit of Neosporin without the pain reliever. That's super important, just like original kind. And that'll help keep it from getting
Okay.
infected. And it can just hang out there. So we have that going on in the incubator. And then I was like, oh, these other eggs are probably duds. And no, I woke up this morning and one that I thought was a dud had pipped.
Oh.
And I was like, what the hell? So I went in and like kind of took tweezers and just opened the pip a little bit to make sure it was still alive. And yep, just peeping
That's
away.
awesome.
So
Well, that's a good lesson to
yeah, so it's
know
like bonus
too.
ducky.
Yeah, like when I was candling, because this is the first time that we've ever hatched, but I think that after all of the conversations that we've had and some of the other things that I've seen from the other Instagrammers that we follow and whatnot that do this as well,
Hmm.
unless an egg is like seeping or stinks, I would keep it in the incubator.
Yeah.
I wouldn't intentionally like crack one open. I mean, like I held on to my eggs for 19 days without cracking them open, even though they were all duds, just because I
Yeah.
wasn't positive that I wasn't seeing development. Like I just wasn't really 100% sure what I was looking for or what I was looking at. So I just erred on the side of caution and kept all of them in there. So that's what I would do
Yeah.
during any of our future hatches as well, unless it stinks or it's weeping
Right.
or seeping or
Right.
yucky.
Because I did hear like they can explode in the incubator.
Yes, yeah, they totally can. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just want to keep an eye on them and it don't feel any shame if you have to hold one up to your nose and sniff it. Like it's totally
Oh,
fine.
I sniffed all of my eggs. Yeah, nope, I totally did that. Like, I didn't like touch it to my nose because, trying to keep the bacteria down in there and
Right,
whatnot,
right.
but, just kind of held it up and took a whiff. That was pretty easy. So, when you put eggs in the incubator, do you wash them first or do you just put them straight in from the chicken
S-
or from the ship box?
So I've always put them in up until the ducklings. I'm pretty sure I never washed them. I
Okay.
and the breeders that sent them obviously didn't wash them either because you want that protective coating over them that naturally
Yeah.
occurs when the hen lays
The
the egg.
bloom.
Yes, and when I was researching hatching ducks, I saw a lot of back and forth about whether you should wash the duck eggs or not. So the call duckling eggs that I got were pretty clean, so we kind of wiped up the ones that looked really gross. But for the Muscovies, like they were disgusting. So one package, we got two shipments of them. So one package that we got, we clean them off. Another package that we got, we kept them dirty. And it turns out our hatch rate was better with the dirtier ducks
Oh, okay.
or the dirtier eggs than the clean ones. But you can't like say, oh, that is the way to go because I mean, they were hatched in separate packages. Their shipping conditions may have been a little different. They were packaged
Yeah.
differently. Like one of them came in individual wrapped eggs hidden in a bunch of shredded paper and padding. And then another one came in just a really well packaged egg carton that was cushioned with shredded paper. So it could have been other factors as well. But I think either way, you're probably fine as long as they're not totally disgusting.
Okay. Yeah, like if you see like tons of like poop or dirt on there, you just kind
Yeah.
of like scrape them off, flick it off, but yeah, you want to keep that bloom intact so that the chick doesn't end up getting something
Right.
funky
Yep.
in
That's
there.
another good reason to probably keep it on as well. So I think it's kind of a to each their own situation, especially with ducks, because like Muscovies take between 36 and 38 days to hatch when they reach the full term. So that's a long time for a dirty egg to be sitting in a humid environment. So that's another argument for the whole idea of having a hatching incubator for ducks because they do take longer. So you're starting with a clean environment, even with a dirty egg for the last part when the humidity is higher.
Yeah.
But I mean, we successfully hatched quite a few Muscovies. I'm kind of surprised, like how well that hatch actually went. So, yay
Well, that's
us.
exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Exciting. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to talk about candling again really briefly because I just want to go by like what we should be looking
Okay.
for each day that we candle. So, like on day 7 when you candle, you're just looking at the embryo and looking to see that veins are starting to develop in the egg because that's what
Hmm.
turns
Yeah.
the yolk into the chicken essentially.
Hmm.
And then you said by day 10 you can normally see like a little bit of movement. Will you be able to see any of like the any shape of a chicken or any outline of a chicken, or is it just still like the blob, but you can just kind of see it moving around in there on its
I think
own?
it's kind of a blob. Sometimes, depending on like the angle the chick's hanging out at, sometimes you can see an eyeball.
Oh,
But usually, like day 15 or 18, like that's when you can start seeing like wings and stuff pretty clearly. So it's kind of like you don't want to take them out and candle them too much. You don't want to mess with them too often, but it is kind of fun to candle a couple times through the process if you can.
yeah. You can like really see the development.
Right.
One of the things that I do is I number all of my eggs before I put them in the incubator so that when I'm making my notes, I can make notes about individual
Oh.
eggs by number. And then when I was candling, because when I wasn't seeing a whole lot of progression, I started just checking an egg every
Mhm.
day and I just made sure that I picked a different one so that
Right.
I wasn't
That's a good
pulling the same
idea.
egg out over and over again.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can always Google pictures of or chicks and eggs at different phases if you're not sure you're seeing what you're supposed to be seeing. Google is always a great resource. You just need to look at images to see where the progression's at.
Well, and I looked at a few of them while I was doing my hatch, so I'll find one of them and I'll link to it in the show notes. But something else that we're going to include in the show notes today is the hatching checklist that I put together for Aurora. Since Aurora was the one that was hatching our eggs, I wanted to make sure that she was able to check off every day the things that she was supposed to be doing and looking for. And that way we could make sure that our hatch was going well, even though a 6-year-old was in charge of it. And I think it worked really well, except for that time that she checked off a few days at a time because she thought that it would make the chickens hatch a little earlier.
Right.
The checklist doesn't work that way. But it will keep you on track so that you know like what day you're actually on, double check that your heat and humidity is correct, double check that the turner is actually doing its job and you notice like that your eggs are turning. Some people put an X on one side of the egg and an O on the other so they can keep track whether it's X's or O's. I just wrote a number on mine and it was either number up or number
Right.
down.
Okay.
That was how I did mine.
Awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super cute checklist too. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was fun. And we'll get to use it again as soon as we have more eggs, which should hopefully be within the
Yeah.
next couple of weeks. But yeah, can you think of anything else that we should go over?
Um,
Like, as far as incubating goes, I think some of our information was a little mixed up there, like in order, but it's
yeah.
only a 30-minute or so episode, so it's easy to listen all the way through and then get started. So,
So something I think that is also really important, and I think this will probably be it for my perspective anyways. You're gonna with chicks and ducks, it is a little different, but they both do an internal pip before the external pip, which just means that they're breaking the membrane and then breaking the outer shell. Once that happens, you definitely do not want to open the incubator if you can avoid it, because every time you open that incubator, a gush of air is going to go in, and it can have that shrink wrap effect on that chick once it is externally pipped. If you have to, it's not a bad idea to use a sprayer. Don't spray directly into the pip. You can spray the egg a little bit, and that'll kind of counteract that shrink wrap effect for both chicks and ducks. But once they are all the way out and just hanging out in there, you want to let them fluff up and dry off. If you have other eggs hatching, let the other ones hatch before you get in there and start trying to pull them out to put them into a brooder. And that's okay because a newly hatched chick can survive up to 3 days on just the yolk that they absorbed during that hatching process. And then when you do move them into the brooder, you can offer them more right away and then food right away too if you want. I know we're kind of breeding into the brooding thing here, but I just want to let people know it is okay for the chicks to hatch in there for a few days or hang out in the incubator for a few days if they need to, because, they were built for that. That's why when you order chicks from a hatchery, they can ship as soon as they hatch as day olds,
yeah.
because they're doing the 2-day, 3-day shipping and they're fine without food and water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally good advice. Oh, and one other thing we should probably mention again, we've mentioned it in a past episode, but not here yet. You want to let eggs go past the 21-day point if you haven't seen any activity, just in case your incubator was running a little low on temperature. It can take like 22 or 23 days to hatch. Like, I think my personal cutoff would be 25 days. I wouldn't let them stay any longer than that.
Yeah.
You should start seeing some internal pipping though by like day 23, I would say at the latest, even if your incubator was running a little low. And do you ever help a chick when they're hatching, or do you leave them alone and let nature run its course?
It's a tough one because for a while there I did say, like, never help a hatch. And then I ended up helping a hatch.
That's right. I'll link to that video in the show notes. Your story is really funny.
So sometimes they can, they're in the wrong position. Their head is, bent the wrong way. Their foot is over their head the wrong way. It can be multiple different reasons. But you do want to make sure if you're going to help, it is like they actually need help and it's the very last minute. So they say pip to zip for chicks can take 24 hours. So once you see that external pip, they should be able to get out within 24 hours. With ducklings, it can take 36 hours. So you just want to be sure that it's time. And if you're going to help, you want to use just like maybe a little bit like just a set of tweezers to take a little bit of that shell off a little bit at a time. Be careful with that membrane because if they're not actually ready to come out, the blood vessels are still doing their thing and the chick could bleed out if you hit one and don't stop immediately. So you want to be really sure. There's a lot of good information out there on the internet about assisting with hatches, and a lot of that information has helped me. But yeah, definitely check out that video that I posted on YouTube a long time ago. But yeah, I got Beyonce out of the deal and she is alive and well still. So, and she's, I think, like 6 months old now. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, see, so she's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you do accidentally nick the membrane and it does end up being a vein, you can just throw a little bit of cornstarch on there and that should help stop the
Yeah.
bleeding, right? Yeah. Or I have some blood stop powder
yeah.
also in my first aid kit.
Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
heard the cornstarch thing. A couple of our chickens got frostbite, and if it doesn't heal properly and like bursts or whatever, you can throw cornstarch on it to stop the bleeding. So I just kind of did that super quick when I accidentally nicked a blood vessel before, and it worked. So it's an easy fix.
If you have any additional questions about hatching, join our Facebook club. It's like a super exclusive club.
Yeah.
We're very picky about who we let in and who we say no to. No, I'm just kidding. If you request, we'll let you in. But yeah, inside our Facebook group, we'll put a little discussion forum in there. It'll have, like a link to this episode. And in the discussion section of that forum, you guys can talk all about hatching and hatching chicks, hatching ducks. We can answer your questions, or you guys can ask each other questions and answer them,
Yeah.
because most of you guys probably know just as
Heck
much, if
yeah.
not more than we do. But yeah, we want to foster that community in there. I just took a really long way to say, like, come join our cool club.
Yeah, but that's fine, Yeah, it's just We Drink and We Farm Things. It's a group on Facebook. We also have a Facebook page, but we don't say a whole lot there. But when you request to join We Drink and We Farm Things, you'll be asked a couple questions, and you're just acknowledging that you're going to be nice to people and that you're not going to be spammy. And then Bev and I will be able to see that you said, yes, I plan to be a good citizen in this group, and then we'll let you in, and you can get access to all kinds of content for free.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for listening to us chat about hatching eggs. But and a huge thank you to our Patreon community. You guys are who help us, raise the funds to get to do like extra episodes and things of this nature. So high five to you guys.
Yeah,
You
thanks.
guys are awesome. We'll pick another topic and we'll do another minisode soon. But if you haven't yet, listen to this week's new Drink and Farm episode. But otherwise, we'll see you in the online world.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.